Have you noticed how most people fail when trying to build new habits? They start full of motivation, make grand promises, but within a few days, everything collapses like smoke. What almost no one knows is that there's a specific number of days that can transform an ordinary practice into an inseparable part of your identity. 66 days. That's the cycle that separates attempts from true habits. And here's the contradiction few realize. The more you try to force motivation, the faster it disappears. The secret isn't waiting for willpower, but applying samurai discipline. A discipline that doesn't negotiate, doesn't bend to excuses, and transforms small rituals into a lifetime of consistency. Musashi proved this in his own journey. He didn't become invincible overnight, but through relentless daily repetition until his mind and body became one. And that's why you can trust this path. It's not theory. It's practice tested by one of the greatest warriors who ever lived. In the next few minutes, you will discover how to use this 66-day cycle to forge habits so strong they won't need motivation anymore. You will understand why small rituals are more powerful than big resolutions and how to apply samurai discipline to transform your life from the inside out. 1. The first day is always the hardest. Every habit begins with a silent battle. Taking the first step even when everything in you wants to delay. The first day is the heaviest because it breaks inertia. It is like a sword still sheathed, demanding extra effort to be drawn. And that's why this beginning carries a hidden power. By conquering the first day, you already proved to yourself that you can conquer the following ones. Musashi understood this principle. In his youth, he had no titles, no recognition, and no famous victories. What he had was a decision to train every single day without fail. That first cut, repeated countless times, was what began to shape his destiny. The habit of daily training became his identity, and his identity built his invincibility. In the first days of a habit, the mind tries to negotiate. You will hear voices saying, "It doesn't matter if I start tomorrow," or "Just this once won't make a difference." But that is exactly when samurai discipline must prevail. The warrior does not negotiate with himself. If it is written in the code, it will be done. That rigor at the start makes all the difference because it sets a standard that cannot be broken. Understand this. It's not about starting perfectly, but about starting. The first day of a habit doesn't need to be grand. It needs to be real. 5 minutes of training, 1 page read, 1 small decision completed. What matters is not the amount, but the victory over the initial resistance. That is the opening cut that clears the way for the next 65 days. 2. The invisible power of repetition. Once the first day is conquered, many believe the hardest part is over. But the truth is that the real battle happens in the silent repetition. It is easy to feel excited at the beginning, but it's constancy that separates those who only try from those who truly transform. Each repetition is like a sword strike. Alone, it may seem small, but together they create mastery. Musashi knew this better than anyone. For years, he practiced the same movement thousands of times until the cut was no longer just technique, but instinct. He didn't seek variety, but depth. In the same way, when you repeat a simple action daily, you are training your mind not to depend on motivation, but to act by nature. It is in repetition that the habit begins to settle into the subconscious. The mind, which once resisted, starts to accept. The body, which once felt the weight, starts to flow naturally, slowly. A new version of you is sculpted until what once felt like effort becomes automatic. That's the secret of 66 days. Daily repetition forging identity. Here's the crucial point. Don't expect immediate results. The power of repetition is invisible at first, like roots growing underground. But each small act, repeated with discipline, creates the foundation that will support your transformation. Continue, even without seeing results, because inevitably, repetition brings the fruits of consistency. 3. Discipline above motivation. The greatest trap for those who try to change their lives is relying only on motivation. At first, it feels infinite, but one difficult day, one unexpected criticism, or one wave of fatigue, and everything falls apart. Motivation is unstable, like the wind shifting direction without warning. Discipline, by contrast, is the solid rock that remains in place no matter the storm. Musashi never waited to feel like training. On cold days, on weekdays, he rose just the same and completed his rituals. For him, the sword didn't wait for his mood, nor did life wait for inspiration. That's how he discovered the truth few want to accept. Those who depend on motivation remain fragile. Those who choose discipline become indestructible. Through the 66 days, you will inevitably face bad days. The difference is that by acting even on those days, you prove to yourself that your willpower does not control your identity. You're no longer a slave to circumstances, but master of your choices. That is the true leap. When your practice doesn't depend on how you feel, but on the commitment you made to your path. Discipline is silent, often invisible to others. But within you, it builds immense confidence because you know you never fail yourself. This is the greatest triumph. The certainty that whatever happens, you will be there honoring your code. This is how habits become unshakable strength, and life begins to truly change. For the power of small rituals. Many people believe that to transform their lives, they need huge and radical changes. But samurai discipline teaches the opposite. True power lies in small rituals, repeated with precision and consistency. It is not the grand occasional feats that shape destiny, but the daily, silent, and seemingly simple choices. Musashi understood this when he practiced the basic cuts thousands of times. He wasn't chasing spectacular techniques. He was seeking perfection in what was essential. Each small gesture contained within it the possibility of victory or defeat. In the same way, your daily habits may seem small. Waking up early, writing for a few minutes, focusing on your breath, but they accumulate the strength to transform your life. Small rituals are powerful because they are sustainable. Unlike grand promises, they don't collapse after a few days. On the contrary, they fit into any routine, they resist fatigue, and they adapt to difficulty. It is in the constancy of these gestures that discipline becomes strong and inseparable from who you are. Over 66 days, every ritual you complete sends a message to your mind. I am someone reliable. I keep my promises. This self-trust is the foundation of true confidence. It is not born from motivational phrases, but from a continuous practice of your rituals. That is how small gestures grow into great victories. 5. The battle against excuses. Every time you decide to build a new habit, excuses appear as invisible enemies. They come disguised as logic. I'm too tired today, I'll start tomorrow. Or, just this once won't matter. But deep down, they are nothing but traps designed to protect comfort and sabotage transformation. Musashi knew this internal enemy well. For him, the worst defeat didn't come from another warrior in battle, but from his own mind trying to convince him to quit. That's why he built a code where the word given to himself was absolute law. If it was written, it would be done. No excuse, however convincing, had power over the discipline of a warrior. During the 66 days, you will inevitably hear those voices. The difference lies in how you respond. By choosing to complete your practice, even when your mind insists on negotiating, you not only win that day, but weaken the power of future excuses. Each time you say no to an excuse, you are training your mind not to betray you. The result is deep freedom. Because when you overcome excuses, you are no longer a hostage to circumstances. You take control of your path. This daily battle is a dividing line between those who try and those who succeed, between those who dream and those who build. And it is in that silent victory that your discipline begins to turn unshakable. 6. When routine becomes identity. At first, every new habit feels like a conscious effort, almost like fighting against your own nature. But over time, something extraordinary happens. Daily repetition stops being just routine and becomes identity. You no longer try to practice. You simply are someone who practices. This is the moment when discipline ceases to be a burden and becomes inseparable from who you are. Musashi lived this transformation. He no longer needed to think about training. Training was as natural as breathing. The sword was no longer just a tool in his hands, but an extension of his being. And that is exactly what 66 days of discipline create. Actions that began as effort become spontaneous reflexes. When a habit becomes identity, it survives even when circumstances change. It doesn't matter if the day is difficult. if criticism appears, or if your body is tired. You don't act because you feel motivated, but because it is your nature. The deepest change does not happen in what you do, but in who you become. This is a samurai turning point, when every small ritual stops being a task and becomes the expression of your essence. At this stage, self-confidence is born unshakably because it no longer depends on effort or motivation, but on inner certainty. You have become the path itself. 7. The value of persisting through setbacks. Many believe that failing for a few days means losing all progress. This is one of the biggest misconceptions that destroys transformation journeys. Samurai discipline teaches the opposite. Falling is not the end, but an inevitable part of the path. The true value lies in returning immediately, without drama, guilt, or delay. Falling doesn't make you weak. Giving up is what keeps you trapped. Musashi never lived a flawless path. He too faced internal defeats, doubts, and days of weakness. What made him legendary was not the absence of failure, but his ability to return to the path without hesitation. The sword that fell to ground was lifted again. Discipline was not about never failing, but about never abandoning. When you fall and rise again, something powerful happens. Your confidence grows because you realize nothing can stop you, not even your own stumbles. This immediate return turns setbacks into fuel, because each time you rise, you prove to yourself that your discipline is greater than your failures. Persisting through setbacks is the ultimate proof that your transformation is real. Motivation quits at the first mistake. Discipline, as the Samurai Code teaches, turns failure into learning and the path into destiny. By choosing to return again and again, you prove that nothing can interrupt your 66-day journey. Transformation after 66 days. 66 days may look, at first, like just 2 ordinary months. But for the one who surrenders to the process, this cycle represents a complete crossing, from conscious effort to transformed identity. What once seemed impossible now feels natural, as if the new habit had always been part of your life. That is the moment when true change arrives. Musashi did not become invincible in a single duel, but in the sum of thousands of days dedicated to practice. He understood that every small training session was part of something greater, and that constancy, not brilliance, builds a legacy. Likewise, at the end of 66 days, you realize you have not just gained a habit, but a new way of being. This transformation is not measured only in external results, but in the inner confidence that rises. You no longer depend on fleeting motivation, because discipline has taken root in your identity. The simple act of keeping your daily word generates a quiet strength that everyone around you can perceive. At the end of the cycle, life is no longer the same. You discover that you didn't need grand revolutions, but small rituals practiced with constancy. Transformation does not happen in a single day, but in the sum of every day you chose to remain firm. That is the samurai's secret. Becoming unbreakable, not by intensity, but by unshakable consistency. When discipline becomes freedom, many confuse discipline with prison, as if it were a set of rules that limits life. But the truth is the opposite. Discipline is the key that unlocks freedom. When you master your habits, you're no longer a slave to laziness, distractions, or excuses. You regain control over yourself and conquer the freedom to choose the life you truly want to live. Musashi understood this principle in his own journey. He didn't train out of obligation, but because each practiced freedom from the weaknesses that could defeat him. Discipline didn't trap him. On the contrary, it gave him the autonomy to face any opponent without fear. He was free because he knew that, no matter the challenge, his mind and body would respond with strength and precision. During 66 days, you realize that discipline begins as effort but ends as liberation. The mind that once was a prisoner of procrastination is now free to create, act, and decide. The body that once gave in to fatigue now moves with energy. This is true freedom, not depending on external circumstances, but becoming the master of your own will. When discipline becomes freedom, life no longer governs you. You govern life. And this silent mastery is the essence of samurai confidence. Acting without needing to prove anything, living without depending on anything, being whole because you learn to be constant. The Samurai Code as a way of life. At the end of 66 days, you realize that the true result was not only creating new habits, but adopting a path. The samurai code is not a temporary technique or a passing challenge. It is a philosophy of life that continues even after the cycle is complete. The habit created becomes part of your identity, and discipline ceases to be something you practice. It becomes who you are. Musashi wrote that the warrior must always walk the same path without straying. This does not mean rigidity, but constancy. It is a commitment to remain firm even when life changes, even when new difficulties arise. That constancy transforms any ordinary person into someone extraordinary. By making the samurai code your way of life, you understand that you no longer need to wait for motivation. You are free from the instability of fleeting emotions and start living guided by the firmness of your principles. The habit no longer depends on conscious effort. It is deeply rooted in your being. And here lies the quietest power of all, the peace of trusting yourself. You no longer need to promise, because you know you will fulfill. You no longer need to prove, because you know you are constant. This is a legacy of 66 days of discipline, turning your life into a reflection of your inner strength. This journey shows that the real secret of transformation does not lie in moments of brilliance, but in constancy. 66 days may seem short, but they are enough to prove to yourself that you could defeat procrastination, silence excuses, and build habits that will never abandon you. Here is the extra teaching for staying until the end. Discipline is not a burden. It is liberation. When you become constant, you no longer live enslaved by moods, motivation, or circumstances. You begin to live guided by an unshakable decision, and that firmness is what opens the way to inevitable results. Remember, it is not perfection that changes your life, but consistency. And when you decide to be constant, success is no longer a distant promise. It becomes only a consequence. This is a gift of the samurai code, turning you into someone who does not waver, does not quit, and discovers a stronger version of yourself each day.